So,
Gustavo, my friend, an accountability partner.
welcome.
How is your
So we're
book?
talking about your running. So,
Yes.
that any analogy between running and writing a book?
It's both painful. It's both painful and you cannot force it. And there are good
Hmm.
days and bad days. But if you train the right muscles, then you will make progress.
I think that when you run, you have a clearer finish line, right?
That is very true.
While the book run, a half marathon turns into a double marathon. It's because,
That's very true. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and the good thing is that it's very complementary. So the running gives good time for thinking.
Hmm.
Um, so I had an epiphany. I will totally change the. So luckily, I'm back to flashcards. So I
Okay.
put all my ideas on flashcards, and then I
Okay.
spent the last 2 weeks going through the flashcards, telling myself the narrative, reshuffling them so that it becomes kind of round, and
Yeah.
adding. So whenever I have an idea, I add a flashcard. And last week, I realized that I don't want to follow this linear approach anymore to the book writing, where I started in history. Okay, so where does professionalism come from? And how can we unravel to understand why we are here today and then where can we go in the future? And I decided that it's actually much more interesting to look at ideas and
Hmm.
arguments and then use the historical part as a support for the argument. So rather non-linear approach to the book. So I reshuffled all of my index cards,
So
which is
basically, you shuffle the order.
yes, yeah, which is a very
Oh,
interesting process actually. To then
good.
think, okay, so how does it change the narrative, and what becomes more important and prominent, and what aspects do I have to rethink? Yeah.
Good. Good. And how important is storytelling for you?
I think it might be. I think it's crucial because it's through the storytelling that an idea takes shape and becomes applicable. And I think it's
Mhm.
through storytelling that the reader can make the idea their own.
Okay.
So I think storytelling is a facilitator for ideas. And for
Hmm.
you?
I don't know. I have some thoughts, but I don't have a clear answer.
Mhm.
So the other day I posted something on Substack, like a note, not an article, saying that asking people if they consider themselves writers or authors, right? And for me, it's not. I always try to avoid the binary term, but in this case, I think it's important to create a distinction because writers first, for me, a writer, there are very few people that are really good writers, right? So everyone can call themselves a writer, but writers are people that are really great at writing, not only their ideas, but the tone, the style, their lines, whatever. And the other thing is that some people focus a lot into the craft, the story, the language, and maybe not so much into the content or what they're bringing, like a novelty, new ideas. So basically, you say, "Wow, that was amazing," but then say, "What is there any thought-provoking idea?" No, but the writing was enjoyable, so you went through it like, "Wow, it wasn't." And then there are some people that have good ideas, but not necessarily the
Mm.
care. It's not that they are not good at writing, no, but
Mm.
and I think that's part of what are we doing here, right? Like, if in the past decades, business books shift from like a non-fiction, let's say, right,
Mhm.
from very kind of a academic style to a lot of storytelling
Mhm.
because that people resonate with stories, they get inspired, blah blah blah. And I think that now, because of what's happening with AI, that we're becoming once again more functional. People are looking for the what's people are saying, what should I do? What they're looking for
Mhm.
solutions. Maybe when you start challenging, like should our books be a little bit more practical and less context-based, less storytelling. I'm not saying no storytelling. I'm saying
Mm,
don't let the storytelling overshadow what the unique idea or practical applications are.
mm. Interesting. Because it's funny, where I thought you were going with the AI was that now all the storytellings sound the same.
That
Because
too.
so it
That too. But
so I think many of the nonfiction books
Mhm.
follow the same approach that The Economist has followed for the last decades. Like
In what sense? In terms of structure or tone or
Gustavo was the CMO of a big publicity company. He did blah 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 blah, and then so
yeah,
first the kind of the individual, their story, and then oh, and then comes the teaching and the theory, and then unpacking. And I find it when the storytelling always follows the same formula. Um, and if every chapter starts like that, I find it boring. And then I get
yeah.
impatient. I'm like, okay, give me the nugget. What do you want to tell me? And I think many books nowadays could have been a blog.
Hmm.
So the idea, it's the first third of a book is the idea and the really interesting part, and the rest is just filling pages because otherwise they wouldn't publish a book but write a blog. Um,
Yeah.
and so storytelling for the storytelling's sake, no, then write a fiction book, I would say. But then only the nugget without the storytelling, then we can ask AI. Then we don't have to buy a book. I think to spend time with a book to really unfold an idea, to make it your own, um, maybe to disrupt your thinking and inspire new thinking. I think that's
Hmm.
the beauty of a book.
So you think?
Mm?
So you think I'm just teasing you a little? No, I don't know. Uh, I think I'm writing a book that no one will read, and if they read, they will skim it.
Mm.
So I have like
Why
three
would you think that?
because people tell me all the time that that's what they do. They buy a book, they want the author to sign it, and then they put it on the bookshelf and probably they would never touch it. I mean, I know that there are a lot of people that read, but those are maybe the people that you know that are the few, but the majority of people that actually buy a non-fiction book, it's because, oh wow, unprofessionalism, that's cool. Yeah, yeah, sure. Okay. I got back into next week and then boom.
So for me,
Yeah,
a
you.
good book, right? It's like I work with a book, it inspires me. I leave so many sticky notes.
No, I do that too, but first I don't read all the books. Many of them I never complete them,
Mm,
and usually I go to look for something versus follow the flow of the book.
mm,
And the same way that happens in articles, no? And like the articles keep getting shorter and shorter because people are browsing them. Same with videos, right? At some point, there were 60-minute videos, then 30, then 15. Now people are creating like 2, 3 second videos. You're like, what? Hello, thank you. Like, and that's it.
And it's very interesting. Do you know the app? Um, it wasn't called Snippet, but something similar. An app that would summarize books for you.
Blinkist or Blinkist.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are
yeah,
many like that. Yeah.
yeah. And I initially liked the idea, so I downloaded it at some point. And it was very inspiring to get all these snippets and summaries. And then I realized that I cannot remember it. So in the
Hmm.
moment, it sounds inspiring, but then I forget them as fast as it took me to listen to them or to read them. And I think what I underestimated until then was how important the process of spending time with an idea is.
Yeah.
So yes, you can tell it in 3 seconds and it will be entertaining, but it won't have any impact.
It's like people who travel to Europe. A lot of people from the US here do that. and they take maybe a week because they don't take many, let's say 10 days, and they want to visit 10 countries.
Yes.
So basically, how was the trip? Oh, the train stations were really great. So you get to get a impression of it, but actually you don't get the real experience. You don't get to understand
Yeah.
where you were.
Yeah, and then maybe the one time where they missed the train, they spent 3 hours at the train station in a conversation with some locals will be the most memorable thing
Hmm. Yeah.
because they actually were forced to take time and to experience something. Mm. Yeah, it's. I find it interesting also the experience with the podcast. So there are some people who suggest, oh, Miriam, why don't you make the podcast shorter because it's too long? People don't take 1.5 hours to listen to a
Hmm.
conversation. And and somehow I think, yes, I could make it shorter, but it's not the point to get just the information across, but the point is to explore a topic together. And this cannot be shortened. And I think then there's a
And you have the
niche.
summaries.
Exactly. And then there's maybe a niche group that will listen to it, who's interested. But then this is a niche group. Simple as that.
So that's the point. Are we looking for depth or
Yeah.
width, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm. No, I was thinking like at least until now, right? Because everything could change. Eh, I th I thought of the book like having three clear parts, and the first part, basically, if you want to understand the framework, the approach, whatever, that's it. You read it short to the point, and you, oh, I get it. Boom. The second one is for those who want to understand more the root cause and dig deeper into why the model is what it is. Some people might say, I don't care about that. So they want to find what's the solution. So and the third part is more about actions, like things that people could do, more exercises, more concrete
Mhm.
stuff.
I love it.
So I'm thinking in
And
terms of what's the experience. Going back to your post, I do the same. I put a lot of post-its and stuff. So, but there are people that are looking for the practical, like what can I do tomorrow? That's the third part. People who want to really understand stuff and fix things, not just
yeah,
put a band-aid. Part two is for them, and the one is everyone should go through it to understand what we're talking about.
and somehow what comes up when I hear, so I love the idea because it's very blunt and it's very action or user friendly. Um, one section that I would be missing is the application by others. So what are the case studies or the examples? How have others used it or how have you used it?
Mhm. They'll be embedded.
Hmm. Okay, in the action steps of
Yeah.
chapter 3.
But I want less about success stories. Like once I had many business book about, oh, I did this, it was so great, I did that, it was amazing, blah, and then okay, but people feel like, shoot, I'm in this shitty hole, managing this shitty team. Where do I get started, right?
So you will
Uh,
share about the failures and what you learned from the miscommunication?
More than failure, I like to share real stories. You know what I mean? So the journey, let's
Mm,
say, because that's the most important thing about like when I work with teams. One thing I always tell them, like, okay, I know that you're thinking that your team sucks and the other company, your competitor's team is amazing, whatever, because that's how we operate. We don't know, and we only take cues from books or case studies or videos or whatever, and every company looks like perfect except ours. And that's
mm,
not the case. So it's more about like having a practical approach to, okay, where
yeah,
are you? And let's work with what you have.
like that.
You know.
And you will leave for a 10-day retreat. So what's your goal for the retreat? Or what's the ambition?
Maybe not having, I like the word ambition. Well, maybe come with a clear outcome that could be I make a lot of progress, or maybe I throw the idea away and then I don't come back to it. I don't think that's the one, but I want to put myself in a way that I don't want just to write, if you know what I mean. So I want to come up with there and say, oh, this is almost the finished product or something like getting closer to it. I mean, the polishing, the finding the right that it's easy, but having the all the idea and the flow really in the right place, almost in the right place, that's what I want to get out of that. That's
Mm.
the ambition.
And then what will be your process? So how do you,
I
10
was going to
days,
ask you if you
no
have any
meeting?
suggestions for me because yeah, the organized person here in the call. I don't know. I haven't planned. I was thinking, do I need to have a plan or should I more follow the my? I'm more into the organic and go with the flow.
Yeah.
Of course, having a discipline, waking up as early as I usually do, like following the same stuff,
Mm.
but having breaks so I can go into for a walk or whatever, and get lost around, do something interesting. So it's not always like in front of a computer or stuff. And exercise, whatever, eat nice things, of course, cook, and make sure I don't get into the, well, checking my phone, whatever, like, like, not to try to silence everything, like from LinkedIn to email to whatever. I'm gonna send a message that I'm out of bounds. I have one of my team members take any potential emergency, try to filter them, and if it's really, really a thing, then call me. No, that's like that's resort.
Mm.
So
I feel a little bit of envy, I must say. I feel a lot of envy.
why is that?
I think it's such a luxury and to do that and to plan that. And I know
Yeah,
that
it's a
you.
luxury, but it's not easy. And once again, once I'm there, like you can, I mean, inspiration finds you, right?
Mm.
So you can make the time for something. I mean, yesterday I woke up, I don't know, it was three, whatever, and my brain started writing. I write. I don't. Ideas don't come. I will write them. I don't know how can do it. I use when I go biking. Sometimes I start like typing mentally, like full sentences and flow, not ideas. So it's weird, and I wish I could basically translate that into written words, so I don't have them to. And today I woke up and then I say, "Oh, what was it? No, some of the concepts I could remember really like the same as was thinking about them, but others." Oh man, that ending, that stuff. Where is it? No. So that's the point. You never know when. So the only worry I have is either getting distracted or getting anxious to, okay, I need to produce, I need to do stuff, and then maybe I don't feel like it, or I'm not getting the right idea.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
pressure that you need to, hey, I'm spending 10 days here, I rent a place, I'm gonna be down, like I need to produce, and then that could be the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah. Although I can imagine that, I mean, you're the person who knows best, that sometimes just starting will also help the inspiration flow, right? Because for how many weeks have you produced an article per week?
7 years and counting. So 350, what else?
So as soon as you're there
And
and you
sometimes
have
there
to
were
have,
two or three in a week. So not only one. So yeah, uh, without AI, before
yeah.
AI existed. Yeah. But once again, I have the commitment and the pressure to not always have a publishing date. Since I moved my blog into Substack, it's every Sunday, 7 a.m. Eastern time. People are going to receive that stuff. So regardless of what happened, I need to publish.
Mm.
And that for me, that having a deadline is my best motivation. Like,
How, how much attention do you attach to the comments or the reactions, the likes?
in what sense?
So you put something on Substack. Do you read the comments? Do they impact, influence the writing? Do they impact your motivation, your ego?
Not necessarily. I check mostly the likes or whatever to see like what resonates with people. But like everything online, sometimes you get a lot of reactions, sometimes not. I also check the stats and readership wise, the numbers are pretty stable. So the articles that go maybe 15%, there are those, but all get a substantial kind of a number of people who open it and at least skim it,
Mhm.
whatever. So that's important. But I don't necessarily, my mood doesn't fluctuate like, oh, I'm the best writer on earth because I got 100 likes or the other way around. It's more like a pulse, so to speak.
Mm. Yeah.
And the comments, no offense to anyone, but usually I think they're a distraction. So there's a lot of people that comment just for the sake of commenting, you know. There are very few people that really engage in a conversation, maybe because they don't have time or they have anything to say, which is uh, so paraphrasing sometimes what you say, but with their like a there are very few people that maybe will challenge thinking, which is what I like because then you say,
Mhm.
oh, let me improve my ideas, or maybe bring some concrete examples or situations in which they went through and then was really interesting. No?
Yeah.
But for example, last week, no, 2 weeks ago, I tried to crowdsource like an idea for an article and invited people to see how using AI for culture design, team building, whatever. And with no offense, people, I'm honest, and then people saying, "What the fuck?" And the ideas that I got from people, either publicly or direct messages, were like, "That sure." Like, if you tell me that 2 years ago, I would tell you, of course. But now it's even like a. So you see what I'm saying, no?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we are stuck in shallow thinking.
Which is very dangerous. I think it's indeed many. I find it interesting how many comments to posts are actually written by AI.
Yeah,
I'm like, a comment? Really? And then it's maybe due to overthinking or they want to contribute or didn't have time to. But this I find kind of surprising.
but that's why
Um,
I like should be because the like turn into, hey, I'm gonna give you something just to.
yeah,
But if you're showing appreciation, then that's enough, unless you
yeah,
have something to add.
exactly. Yeah. Um, what I experimented a little bit. So I had this phase where I suddenly realized that I have a big consistency integrity problem. That I praise unprofessionalism and the unpolished, and then I would spend too much time polishing my posts. Um, so I, yeah, right.
We are who we are.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
that was a quite painful observation. So I then decided to go back to unpolished. So if I have an idea, I write it down. I might think about it, whether it's understandable, but then I publish it, and then use AI to generate a picture that goes along, which sometimes takes
Mhm,
even longer. It's so bad. Um, but I realized that two things. One is I now leave, I don't over explain anymore. So I stopped explaining or making sense of my questions and ideas and thinking flow. So I don't explain where this came from and what I mean.
mhm,
Um, and this, and then I have many more comments and interesting comments actually from people because they contribute their perspective and what they read into it. And I think the second component to that is, or the third, that I put this signature. Hi, I'm Miriam. I'm writing this book.
mhm,
Please comment because this will help my thinking process. So over the past posts where I really kept myself short, being very blunt and unpolished, and don't share too much information, I've received some interesting comments and food for thought, actually, and interesting conversations happening under the posts.
Good.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
so that was a good learning.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. I'm conducting, no, I haven't closed it yet, but I'm getting a lot of responses. Sorry that it's helping me inform the book. And one thing I asked people to share stories, so it's optional.
Hmm.
And I was surprised about how many people actually share stuff.
Mm, yeah.
like stories about a conversation that never happened, whatever. Like, of course, some people say, very generic, but a lot of people spend time like sharing really interesting stuff.
Cool.
And I was, because I didn't take it from, oh, the guys are helping me. Well, of course they are, but I took it more like sometimes people are looking for spaces to share specific things, so they need the right prompt to contribute, right?
Yeah, good one.
And
And
usually it's a multiple choice, and then at the end they have two open questions, and those got a lot of time
yeah,
from people, right? Was positively surprised.
that's great. And then the interaction really happens and is more valuable, I guess, because it's not just to show off on social media.
Exactly. That's what I
Yeah,
mean. It's more intimate, and also I'm going through them because there are thousands of responses. I'm trying to make some sense, but there's some stories that are really great, and I have people's emails. Most of them also, that's not a surprise. Like 80, 90% of people share their email when that was optional to keep me posted, whatever. So I can go back and say, hey, I like your story. Can we talk? Can you give me more? And
yeah.
blah, blah. So
That's a great idea. And it actually reminds me that I have a website to collect stories, and I think I never informed anyone about this website to collect the stories.
what kind of stories?
Um, I'm looking for stories where people were air quotes unprofessional and successful. So I'm
Okay.
looking for the stories of hope and rebellion.
I saw that
Yeah,
the ship. Yeah.
yeah. And maybe that's why I haven't published it yet, I think. Because what I realized that people love sharing, complaining about all of that. And I'm actually now looking for, okay, so, and then what? So it's nice to complain about professionalism and the status quo and all
Mhm.
of that. Um, but
So you
then how
want
do
people
we,
that a space to brag or share or whatever.
not
Yeah.
to brag, but to share their stories and successes. So I think there are many entrepreneurs or employees or managers or founders, leaders who have followed their gut, do something that would be considered unprofessional, and been massively successful with it.
Yeah. And we fantastic to find stories because you mentioned founders, whatever. So many stories about people who broke rules and stuff are on the founder, whatever, but it would be also great to find stories within a more constrained environment.
Yeah, yeah,
Because when you
employees.
have nothing to lose, like when you're
Mhm.
starting and you're young, you say, okay, who cares, right? But when you have more to lose, that would be interesting also.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about stories. I'm not saying you should, I'm thinking out loud here of people who play the professional part and then they never got the return on investment. So they were always saying, oh, this is going to take me where I want. And then basically,
Mm,
so playing it safe doesn't necessarily get you, like
yeah, good one.
and
And
even
then,
I know a lot of people that they navigated corporate culture, they got to a successful position, but they're doing job that's really sucks. They're always getting orders, they're always taking, like implementing restructures, reorg, firing people, sharing bad news, everything that goes against who they are. They're not having joy, but they have a nice living, but they're not happy as professionals also in their personal lives because of that.
and I think that's the majority of people. And I actually, for me, I hope that the book will give them the courage to change something. Because
Mhm.
unfortunately, I think that was the goal of corporate professionalism. And I think they have succeeded quite well. Right?
To manipulate you and yeah, put
Yeah, I mean, I lived and worked in Luxembourg for almost 3 years, and I always called it the golden cage because y- everyone kind of complains. Nobody's really happy, but the salaries and the um, status, but also quality of life is so high that you cannot escape. It's so difficult. It's so difficult to break out.
hmm.
Um,
By design, you say.
yeah, because the salaries are too high.
Okay, but that's
Um,
what I'm saying. They know that it's shitty, and but they want to people to.
yeah, and they think that, yeah. And most people rather take the mediocre but safe
Mhm.
than dare dreaming that it could be different. Or
And
also
do they
trusting
ever wake
themselves.
up from that dream?
Some do. I mean, I think it
Mhm.
was the best decision I took ever to quit the job.
Mhm.
I would assume that you think the same about quitting your corporate career.
Mhm. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, and liberating.
Yes, it is. It is. Cool. No, I think it's interesting to, in your case, to connect with those real, so move beyond the model and the approach to also like what's the actual impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
Basically, what people are missing. Because to your point, we were sold like a model or a journey, right? If you do this, you're gonna be success. So, and indeed, it's all about what does success look like.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So that professionalism lens has a
Mm.
predefined
Yeah.
version of success
Yeah.
instead of inviting you to like the Luxembourg story.
Mm.
Luxembourg predefined what success look like for people and say, hey, we're gonna give you all this stuff, perks and whatever, but
Yeah.
at the expense of this.
What's the
And people
opportunity
took the
cost?
bait. Hmm.
One funny thing that I realized while writing the book is that sometimes it seems as if I'm writing an economics book because
Tell me more.
there are a lot of economic principles that I talk about. So the market for lemons, where the good ones will. So the market for lemons is an economic concept where it's the used car market, where you cannot distinguish whether a used car is high quality or low quality. And if you cannot distinguish the quality as a buyer, you won't spend lots of money in a used car. So all the car sellers who are selling high quality cars will eventually disappear. And then you're left with a market for lemons.
Mhm.
In professional, if we don't know whether a freelancer or an employee or an expert is a real expert or just an imposter, um, if we cannot tell the difference, right? Why would we pay a high price for someone we don't know whether they're good? And then those who are good, they will leave the market, making it a market for lemons. And then there's a prisoner's dilemma, and now there are opportunity costs. So there are all these
Well,
kind of basic economic principles that somehow I come across on the doing the research for my book. But sometimes I wonder what this is telling me actually.
I don't know, you know?
Mm.
What is it telling you?
Um, I think what it's telling me is two things. One is our we do wear a lens through which we see the world that is very often inspired by either our education or our culture.
Mhm.
And that's important because that's that makes it our own. So if I studied economics and sociology, so I'm a facilitator, so the book I write will always reflect these lenses. And I think that
That's
makes it
good because that's
interesting.
what you, yeah,
Yeah,
that's who we are and how you
yeah,
see the world.
yeah.
The thing you talk about how we were raised and educated. So the thing about professionalism, I think it starts when you start working. I think it starts even before that. Um, when we last talked, remember I was on that AI image with the seatbelt. We were in a car going to my son's graduation from college, and they call it here commencement,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
not graduation.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they focus the speeches, the energy, the discussion, the ceremony into starting your career, what's going to be next. And I was thinking two things. First, these guys have been studying for 4 or 5 years, whatever, in a row. Like, first, give them a chance to celebrate, right? Instead of celebrating the accomplishment, they were already like, well, now you need to do this, and like talking about the career, the success, like already there, no? Which is so that's commencement versus wrapping up a chapter. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
part of the professional life that you're always into what's the next challenge, what's next, versus you never get to acknowledge that part.
Yeah.
But I think that since they started college or even before that, they're already getting fed by their teachers or whatever about, hey, you need to go through this route. So professionalism is embedded at early stages of our lives, not we ask kids that are 5 year old, seven, they're playing what you want to go when you grow up. Basically, what career do you want to pursue, right? Because they
Yeah.
were not telling them, hey, which sport do you want to play? And it's
What
so
person do
we're
you want to
really
be?
asking about the career when people are seven, eight, like
Mm.
what? So they really need to make a decision or try to fit a standard because if you don't say doctor or lawyer or whatever, then they're gonna look at you what? And so I think that the professionalism concept it's a conflicting idea that starts really early.
Mm.
Uh,
Interesting. And I wonder to what extent it's actually by a lack of creativity. Um, so I think that many adults ask the kids, what do you want to do when you grow up? Not to put pressure on them, but either because they have they're curious about this little child and see themselves in there, and it allows them to dream again instead of to think about their own boring career.
yes, and there are other people that also maybe they want the child to
Mm.
see themselves into them. So I
Yeah.
went through this path. It didn't result. It's frustrating. So now you're gonna get there too, right? It's a, you
Yes.
see what I'm saying? That
Yeah, if you have own children.
instead
Mm.
of liberating the kid, they
Yeah.
wanna like okay, get ready for
Yeah.
the life sucks.
And it's interesting because nowadays, I mean, who knows what kind of jobs there will be when the child grows up?
Or if there were any jobs.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. Yeah.
And
Yesterday I was reading a Substack article of a guy, basically software engineer, 20 years career, making a lot of money, whatever. And now he's unemployed and he was half joking, half not, living in a like in a wagon, whatever, like talking about 1 year without a job, sending 900 whatever job proposals and always getting answers by AI and never getting an opportunity to be interviewed, or maybe getting three, four interviews and not even get to the final round and whatever. So, and he was talking about how this is happening faster than maybe we know, and a lot of people are getting out of the job market. So imagine people like my son that he started saying like,
yeah,
where do you start?
yeah, that's very true.
I don't know Europe, but here
And
in the US, the unemployment for young generations is much, much higher than for adults.
and then I think the question of the what are you giving up? What are the opportunity costs of following this kind of predefined professional career path? So let's assume that you're giving up all these creativities, hobbies, hopes, because you put all your eggs in one basket to land this professional career, and then you don't even get a chance, or you get laid off. Um, so I think it's even more risky nowadays to try to fit in because what we're giving up our integrity, our creativity, our quirkiness, um, don't even know whether it's worth giving it up,
Hmm.
and it might be too late.
Good. Or maybe there's a shift also in terms of if you say I'm going to pursue a blue collar, just to give you a career that's unprofessional because you need to become a whatever white collar job and work in an office with computers with, and then those jobs that were the paradigm of a great career now are the ones who are going to be easier to replace.
Yeah,
But if you're running a farm, you still need people to take care of the farm. You know what I mean? Like, or a carpenter to build something. But so their intellectual jobs are easier to automate.
yeah, and I
Everything
think
that has to do with
yeah,
writing, with thinking,
yeah,
but doing.
yeah, and I think these are actually the jobs that are still following the ethical standards of professionalism,
Mhm.
honoring the craft.
Yeah,
And there's no shortcut. And there's a very clear measure whether you're capable of doing that or not. Can you open the closet or not? Is it cricket
should
or
you?
not?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Should we? I don't know. So interesting conversation. Where are you with the book itself? You mentioned that you got back to talking about accountability, that you got back to the cards and you're making progress and you switch a little bit the approach in terms of historically a
Yeah.
historical path to more into issue by issue and providing history as a context. So where are you now? What are you doing? Where do you feel you are?
I think I'm getting close to having my narrative
Okay.
together. So, and interestingly, it's more focused now on the big questions, also on how do we measure all of that? So, what's the role of KPI? And I think, and this is where it becomes complex, and that's why it takes longer. Is okay, it's easy to criticize, but
Hmm.
what is the alternative? And then thinking, coming back to first order principles. Um, so yeah, so I think I made great progress now that I know what it will be about and what the main narrative will be.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm still not there to start writing. Um, and I'm also, we spoke about deadlines, and
Hmm.
I realized that I would rather, and I don't want this to sound like an excuse because I mean it, I would rather take a year longer and have something of depth and substance than to finish quick and have something superficial.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I think I owe it to the topic. I think it's I think I underestimated the depth and the width of the topic. Because professionalism, I could write a book about how bad it is that we have dress codes and that we all speak English and that we have to be so polished. And then I can expand this idea and add a few stories around it. And then it's nice. Um, but what I'm really interested is beyond just that. So why is it that entire companies are actually building a system where we promote people who follow the script, but then are incapable of leading an organization through a crisis because they've used to follow the script. So what needs to change in terms of how how we deal with our people and whom we
Hmm.
promote and whom we attract and how we think about success.
But are you talking to individual so you can first give them the insight, the realization to help them look at themselves at the mirror and then decide to change? Or are you also trying to convince, persuade, whatever, kick their butts of the
Mm.
people that create the system?
Mm.
Because the problem is twofold.
It is.
You can make a choice to say, I don't want to be part of the Luxembourg fantasy model,
Mhm.
but then there's someone who keeps building that model instead of saying, hey, let's change what living in Luxembourg actually is all about.
Yeah. Um, my girlfriend asked me the same question. Who do you write the book for? And and I think if I can encourage, empower those who follow the model to that they can change, I think this would be great. To have the ambition to change the world with it. Might be a little bit overambitious, but at least making people think.
No, but what I'm thinking, it feels, or this, nothing feel, this could be this is a system, and in order to get rid, you need to quit. Kind of
Mhm.
Brazil, the movie. I don't know if you saw it. Or have you seen that movie,
Good.
Brazil?
No.
You should watch it from the late 80s. Terry Gilliam, you need to watch the movie.
Okay.
It's 30 years ago version of what you're talking about. You're gonna see the guy that gets into the corporate and whatever and the structure and brainwashing and fake.
Brazil. Brazil, like the country.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Mm.
And the guy escapes like with fantasy and dreaming and becoming the superhero. So it's a lot of because he couldn't deal with the reality. It has a lot of layers, but it's going to touch a nerve related to this topic. So it could be seen that, hey, the system is broken. So that's why I was telling you earlier. So is the solution don't be a corporate employee and become your own entrepreneur,
Mm.
founder, whatever? Or you're also equipping, not to change the world, but equipping people that have influence and power and
Yes.
care to start
Yes.
shaking up the system from inside out.
Yes. Absolutely. I think that's the main aim.
Okay, you see,
Yeah.
then
Thank you.
then you can help people's world, not their world, but their world. And
Exactly. And I
that's
think everyone can make a small difference
Mhm.
that might become a big difference. Um,
I'm not saying the other way is wrong by any means, but I'll say like many times when we present there's a system problem, the solution feels like the system is broken, so you need to quit. Versus, okay, how can you fix Luxembourg living in Luxembourg, not moving
exactly.
to
Yeah. And I think,
Netherlands?
yeah. And this, so it brings me back to an economic model is what is the trade-off? What are the cost benefits? So how painful must it be, and how can we change it without taking this huge risk? Also, because
Mhm,
not everyone, if someone has a family, um, and is maybe not an entrepreneur, why would they quit the job? But they can still have a job with more integrity, and without risking the burnout and anxiety. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest things. Um, Also showing that there is, even for the companies, there is a benefit by changing the system. I think that even the companies would benefit to look at their KPIs and to look at their models and at their professional standards, because I think they're wasting a lot of potential inside by not changing it.
mhm.
Um, yeah, because burnout and anxiety, I think, are very costly for
Yeah.
everyone, and it doesn't have to be that way.
I think that most leaders know that. Many simply say, I don't care. So people are replaceable when they're done. There's new, like people who lead a war, you know that a lot of
Mm.
soldiers are going to die, and that's by design. And they always have a reserve. So, and I think that in corporate world, that same mentality. Remember that many of the strategy terms and thinking that exist in corporate was inherited from the military.
Hmm.
So still the notion that we are resources, that we are replaceable, that people need to give their most, no,
Yeah,
sacrifice their lives for the company, and then once they're done, a new
yeah,
generation comes, or I replace you.
yeah.
So
And
the companies operate with the mindset that you are replaceable.
I yes, and I wonder whether these the leaders who have this mindset, whether they're actually, because I don't believe that they're sociopaths. I think they're traumatized, and I think the lack of compassion for others is rooted in a lack of compassion for themselves, and that they are actually burned out.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's also shocking because I think a healthy human being would not see their team members um, as replaceable and just um,
Yeah, I think that at some point
goods.
we are anesthetized and we become numb to those, so we stop seeing or feeling that. So I would say that the same as kids, you replicate what you observe. Kids copy. When you see a kid that's shouting or hurting someone because they see violence at home and then they replicate
Mm,
that. If a kid is kind, then because their parents are. So, and on the workplace, same happens when you are basically you learn from observation mostly and some coaching, but basically people learn how their bosses what they prioritize, how they speak, what they do, and then they replicate that. At some point, they lose perspective who they are because they're just part of the game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you can break that vicious circle.
That's the point, creating that
Yeah,
awareness that, hey, why are you doing this?
exactly.
I've been in lots of meetings in which people are talking about, hey, we need to cut 20, 30. It feels that they're talking about like removing the wall from a room to make it more open. And no one ever cares like, oh, what are we going to do with people? There are companies that do, but the majority, they talk about people and restructures and firing, whatever. They don't even care about the impact in people's lives, families, like self-esteem and so on. So on.
And it's
It's
because they don't have the
just,
capacity, because they're overwhelmed, overworked, and because it's painful. I think to if these people would really have to digest the information what they have to do with the people's life, they would be
yeah.
overwhelmed and out of work because of a burnout. So that's their protection.
Or I've heard this many times, like you cut 10% of your team, your department, or I will choose the people for you. So,
Mm, yeah,
or you're next, you go with the people and then I'll bring someone who will take care of that. So you either put people in a position that's fire your team or fire you and bring someone who will fire you and your team, right?
yeah.
So
Is this sustainable?
I don't think so. I mean, we mentioned this in an earlier call, like the focus on short-term goals, like quarterly goals, is basically lowering everyone's bar because no, we talk about innovation and future of work and whatever, but then we're measuring like short-term results.
Yeah.
So you can never make long-term decisions when you're just measuring your
Short-term.
quarter P&L.
And I wonder whether we can do that without seeing the entire system. So the person who is firing 10, 20% of the stuff as if they were sheep, how is this decision and behavior impacting them as they come home to their family? Or maybe to their friends or without family and friends. So what is doing to them as a human being once they step outside of work? And because I think it has a huge impact. Um,
And many companies have system in place, but being cynical here, many systems are designed to remove the guilt from those who execute the intervention, but they're not really designed to help people. So, I'm going to place you an outplacement service. You're going to go there. What they give a lot of stuff that someone else is going to take care. So we remove you from but they don't
yeah.
really care. I mean, they don't really network. There are very few companies. I mean, I remember Airbnb when when COVID hit, of course, people stopped traveling, so Airbnb business tanked, and they gave people like they vested their stock, even if they haven't been enough time in the company. They extended their health insurance, which here, especially in the US, is super costly, and they created a website to promote the talent and help them find work.
Mm,
So they didn't just pay an external consultant to a coach, a career coach to help you get. So they were really intentional.
yeah.
But those are more the exceptions than the norm,
Yeah. Yeah.
fortunately. And I was thinking, sorry, last thing that you called me with the metaphor about the sheep. I would say that a farmer would never kill their sheep unnecessarily,
Yes.
would never sacrifice because they know the value.
Yes. Yeah. And then it becomes an accounting problem, right? So
Mhm.
why are
But
people a
then,
cost?
well, but that's one. But then at a executive level, you mentioned sheep, they treat people like sheep, but in a way that not even a farmer would treat their sheep.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying
Yeah, because
to
they are
put it
just a
in
cost and not
context.
an investment for the farmer. It's an asset. The sheep are an asset for
Yeah.
the farmer,
And
but
they
they're a
also are
cost.
connected. They see them grow. They're
Yeah.
really ingrained into their growth.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of that, and all of that is in the small topic of professionalism, and that's why it's
Farmers are more
difficult.
professional than CEOs.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can learn. Well, but that's another point.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So hopefully, when you come back from your retreat, I will have, we'll both have some progress to report.
Both. Yeah, exactly. So
Especially,
I'm starting getting this angst. Yeah, usually I don't get better. Okay, I'm gonna use that time effectively. I'm starting to focus on the outcome. So I wanna stop thinking about it and find my way
no pressure.
around it. Oh, sure.
No
With you,
pressure.
never.
Hmm. What are you
Absolutely.
taking away from our conversation?
I don't know, we were like spinning around in a good way. I think that the most important thing is you mentioned who we will write the book for, but also what do we want the book, what's the role of the book, how
Mm.
it could help people, right? And then that informs the storytelling, the structure, the whatever, no? So I think it's interesting how
Mm.
you shift your order, keeping the goal and your reader in mind.
Yeah.
What about you?
Mm. I think for me, what I'm similar. So what kind of book is it supposed to be? That it's not a textbook. So I'm not teaching or explaining, but planting seeds.
Mhm.
And I think it's, yeah, how can the book enable? And I think that's very inspiring what you're doing with your book, where you have the very clear different parts,
Mhm.
so that it's a choose your own adventure book or choose your own depth.
Mhm.
Um, and I will also think more about what is the real impact and how wide do I want to actually make it? Because otherwise, I never stop or never start.
Have you asked people what they expect from a book like that, for
Mm,
starters? Like, what would you buy it? No, no. Or if I give it to you, what would you do with it?
mm, I haven't, and I don't think that I want to do that
Okay.
because it's then just a different bias than my. I am biased, but so is everyone else. And then I would rather write the book that I would want to read. Um, yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's
My
similar
question
with the.
wasn't about people telling you what book you should write. It was maybe one person might come with some thought that
Mm,
help you connect what you have because you have a lot of things you need to.
mhm,
What's the key idea? You still need to land there.
yeah,
Not
and
about
I
your approach to unprofessionalism, but your approach to book, the kind of book you want
yes,
to
yeah,
have.
yeah. Yeah, and I hope that I will soon kick off the process with the book coach. So, and she will also help me to hopefully distill it, help my thinking
Good.
process. Yeah, and first a long weekend that will also help,
Beautiful.
right?
That's great. Yeah, that helps. Always helps.
Yes. Thank you, Gustavo.
Great talking to you.
Oh,
See you in 2 weeks.
yes. See you in 2 weeks, and we need our um little picture. 1, 2, 3. Good. I wish you a fantastic retreat.
Thank you so much. Do you want to schedule the
Oh yes.
following touch base? Or?